Now
There
we're
we go.
ready.
You know, I have to put this back on, so you just have to look for it.
Oh, yes, it says recording over there.
You know what, let me also mute everybody, because if not, we're gonna start to hear them. They're gonna start to, okay, they're all muted. That's good.
Is there any way we can get Jeff in it?
It's your show. I'm just a question.
Let's make it to the back a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. We got it. Music.
Okay, whenever you're.
Is mine on? Okay, fine. I don't know if mine's, oh, I think.
You're good. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. You know, Mendy just said that Rachel and I do a lot for the shul and get very involved, but there's a certain person named Mendy, I think, who puts on a fair number of events seemingly every week. So thank you for that. I know, Mendy, it's not your night. You want me to focus on Rachel. I know.
Yeah, she called Mandy.
We thought we muted him. He's participating already. Jay, we'll get to the participation part later. Okay, so I think everybody more or less knows the name Krich because they're so involved in Shomrei Torah and the community, and you've seen Daniel Lane, you've seen Rachel involved with sisterhood as part of the executive team and leadership. You've been to her house for meals, you've spoken to her in Kiddush, but you probably never spent the time to really hear her whole story. And you'll be amazed at things you can learn about someone when you just sit and focus on them telling you where they came from, what their story is about, and how they got to the point where they are today. So my job is to feed you questions that will allow your story to come out to the masses. Ready to start?
Sure. And I just want to first say thank you again for Honey for asking and Jeff for doing this. And I'm honored. And I hope my story is interesting, or I give at least a little bit of something over that is meaningful to some people.
I'm sure you will.
I'll do my best. If not, there's a refund.
No, Mendy says no refund.
No refund.
All right, so I believe it's very well known that Daniel Krich comes from California. I'm not sure why that's like so well known that his family is from Los Angeles, but until I got to know Rachel a little bit, I didn't realize that your story also begins on the West Coast. So how does it start for you?
So I was born in Berkeley, California, which is Northern California, which is a different country from Los Angeles. I was never in Los Angeles until Daniel and I got engaged. Like it was not part of our world. But I grew up in Northern California, and then when I was 8, my family moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where everybody goes, oh. And it doesn't seem like a place that, like a typical place on someone's journey, but I think it's very obvious to hear at that point that my family wasn't observant when I was growing up. So we were very culturally Jewish and connected and, you know, identified as Jewish, but we weren't practicing. We didn't have that Masorah. And so when moving to Santa Fe, just was for various reasons. We went for, it's a really weird story. Basically, there was a fire in Oakland. Anyone know about the Oakland fires? Okay, so yes, in the early 90s, Oakland, California, like burnt down. And it was horrific, and the fire was very close to our house, and everybody had to evacuate. It was this whole, my grandmother had just had surgery, and everyone had to evacuate to her house, and I was probably in first grade, and I remember it very vividly. My parents were out of town, which was probably a little traumatic for me to deal with all this. Anyway, when they came back, there was a lot of environmental repercussions from that fire. I mean, if you look at it, it just burnt down. And my mother had a lot of issues with that, and we had family. My aunt she lived in Taos, New Mexico, which is not Santa Fe, but like nobody lived in Taos, so we looked at where there were actually people, and somehow the environment there was better for her, and we moved, and that was why we ended up in Santa Fe.
So you and I have in common, we both come from secular Jewish families.
Yes.
So we know the Orthodox Rachel Krich. So just like bring it to life a little bit more, like what was your family doing in like the early years in terms of your Judaism?
So early Judaism was very, what I would say is, I guess, a very typical of very involved secular families, meaning you celebrated the big holidays. We actually had family Friday night dinners every week. And that was not typical, I would say, of most people. And it just, we identified as Jewish, we knew we were Jewish, but it wasn't, we didn't do any of the things that you do, like what we all do now. And so when we were on the path of becoming more religious, I think for me, or more observant, because we we're always very affiliated religious, more observant, I think from my perspective was I thrive on structure and systems. And it's something that always comes up. And I think that that's the type of personality that lends itself to being very acute to the Orthodox life, because that's really what we have. And so that was really part of what drew me to it when my family was starting that process.
Okay, so given how your story starts in terms of the Judaism, it doesn't sound to me like that's a family that would end up becoming Orthodox, because I don't see like the opening of where it becomes more significant. So like, what are a couple of the major milestones or things that happened and got that journey going?
So we moved to Santa Fe, and there wasn't a lot of Jewish life in Santa Fe, but more than one would expect, because a lot of people just moved to Santa Fe and a lot of Jews moved. But while we were there, my family somehow met the few observant people in town, and there wasn't an official Chabad, so my family started helping to bring in the first shaliachs into Santa Fe. Again, not an observant family, but they were involved in bringing the first shaliachs into Santa Fe. And as that process went, my parents actually got divorced in the middle of all of this, which is part of, I guess, part of the story of there. And once the Chabad came, our family became more and more affiliated. We're a great Chabad success story, except I'm now sitting here in a modern Orthodox shul living modern Orthodox life, so I don't know how successful I think I really am, but like, okay, I'm close. And at that time, our family started becoming a little more observant, and my mother became very observant when I was probably about in 10th and 11th grade. And somehow, a very odd transition happened after my 11th grade year of high school. We took like a trip out here to visit family friends into like the modern Orthodox community. It was the first time I ever saw Orthodoxy in that capacity, in modern Orthodox life, because if you only saw Chabad and you were the secular kid, it can be very, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then when you're like, oh, I can get a coffee at Starbucks still, and there's certain things that made it a little bit more user-friendly to me, and I thought, okay, this is really great and interesting. And at the time, things weren't so great back in Santa Fe, and there was nothing really holding us there. So my mom said, let's move here. And I went, okay, I'm 16, what do I know? We moved to New Jersey, and I went to Berea High School for my senior year of high school. Now, the weird part about that is they never let anyone into that high school who isn't like it's like I don't want to say it like it's a very elite school. I mean, Amalia worked there, so it has to be one of the best. I was also a clerical there. No. Yes, so I was there when Pia Newer was principal, and she did not mess around. And I think that Hashem just made her black out and say yes when they brought me in. Oh, I really think that's what happened. There's no reason that, like, okay, here's this kid, she's been religious for like, she's not, and she doesn't know the olive bakes, and you should put her in your school. And she went, okay. And I don't know why, and she did, and that was life-changing for me. And she really did, I think back on it, I never really had too much to do with her because I didn't get in trouble. So I didn't really see her very much. But she really, I don't think she realized what she did for my life by saying, okay, you can come to this school. And then I don't know if the girls in my class, who I'm still friends with to this day, who live in this community or other ones, know what they did by just being super welcoming. Don't worry, there are plenty that weren't welcoming. we were talking about this. But the ones who were just, I guess I was cool to them. So they thought like, okay, you're fun. And I thought they were like amazing and nice. And it was just this incredible experience. I don't remember anything I learned because I didn't understand anything that was happening in the classes. But it was fantastic. It was in 2002 when I graduated. So when they said, oh, we send everyone to Israel and there's a intifada and everyone's getting blown up and we think you should send your daughter there, my parents went, no. Cute. We're not doing it. So I didn't go to seminary. They probably, thinking back, knowing these schools, I'm not sure why they would push a lot harder for like a girl like me to go, but okay, it's fine. Everything happens for a reason. I took a year off and then I went to Stern with my class. And at that point, I was able to fake it so well, like no one really understood. Like I got my bona fides from Berea. And I don't know if anyone who's not Jeff probably can relate to this. If you don't grow up from, and you're in the world of, and you start living that world, there's certain like these from bona fides, like, oh, I went to this school, or I went to that camp, or I went to this. And if you don't have that, no matter how inside you are, you're still an outsider. And it takes time to kind of get into the fold of things. Anyway, so I think by the time I got through Stern, I was able to get to that point. And I'm going to, later when we talk about my work, I'm going to talk back to this so that there's a reason for it. But, and through all the connections I made and everyone I met in college. And then I met Daniel, and then I did what we were supposed to do at YU. We met and we got married. And,
wait, we have to.
We want to pause?
No, well, we at least have to know how you met him.
Okay.
What you liked about him.
Yeah, so we met, YU has a lot of activities that they throw a bunch of girls and boys together and say, get married, go. And it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. And it worked for us there. They had a radio station at the time. And for some reason, I was a nerd and I was part of the radio station. And we had an event because I started very young, starting running events. And we had an event, and the event was I don't even remember what it was, but whatever it was, we were inviting people that were not part of the radio, that didn't have shows, to come and spend time and hang out in the radio station. And the funny thing is, Brittany Rickless, who lives here, was Brittany Boystock, was friends with Daniel and invited him to come and hang out there. Brittany and Josh were part of the radio station also, and I met him that night, and he was studying for the MCATs, and then he went back home for peace. I don't know exactly what happened, but then I was like, oh, we're having a Shabbaton, you should come. Like, this is how these things happen. And then he did, and then he asked me out, and then we got married 9 months later. That's it.
But from what I know about Daniel, his background is like very different from yours. So
Yeah, they were so excited when they heard about me.
Well, that's what I want, like, what was that? First, there has to be conversations between the two of you about your background compared to his, and then how welcoming.
We were 22. You think we're having such nuanced conversation?
Something.
I can't remember the details of them. And I'm kind of happy that he's at home dealing with the fact that the 2 toddlers were in no place to be left alone with the teenagers, because he might remember more. So maybe next time we'll ask him. But I think it came up, and I don't think he didn't care. And I thought, like, I finally tricked them. And at first, his parents were not thrilled. His brother had actually recently gotten divorced, so they were very nervous about anyone, and they were like, we're going to call shidduchim, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And he's like, that's not happening. And then I met my in-laws, and they were like, all right, she seems like normal-ish. I mean, I don't know at that point, but we really love each other now. So it's really like, it's fine, whatever they thought before. But it's a little scary, you expect one thing from your kid. You grow up from Los Angeles, your kid goes to Yeshiva Gedola, he goes to Tomo for school, and the only reason he goes to YU is because he wants to be a doctor. And when he asked his Rosh Yeshiva, what should I do? He basically was just like, if you're gonna go into the schmutz, he had something he said was terrible about, like, all college is terrible, you might as well go to the least terrible college, which was YU. So he's like, all right, fine, that's where I went. So it had a very different trajectory planned for him. And it's clearly, I mean, I hope they think it worked out. But yeah, it was, I wish I could say what we sat in this conversation. We were 22, we're idiots. I don't know why they let you get married at that age.
But did you think at all, okay, I don't have this background religiously, but marrying this guy, if, God willing, we have kids someday, it's like a real asset that he's bringing that to the family.
Oh, yeah, it was just definitely like, who does the homework with the kids? It's still not me. It's the kind of, and it's something I can't do all the things that he can do to help them. So it's just like, oh, sorry, Daddy's got to do this. And at first it might have felt like, oh, I feel bad, I can't do it. And then I'm like, no, I do everything else. If I could do this, I would be doing it, and therefore I'd just be doing too much. So no, but it's a huge asset. something I probably did think about at the time, then it would be helpful. But I also, a lot of people talk about like when they're dating and what they're thinking and at their relationship. I was just lucky because I was an idiot and I tripped into this. I'm being totally honest. I didn't think that deeply about it. Just, which is not great for like an interview you're gonna have 20 years later.
So we know you're raising your family in Fairlawn, so take us inside the story of you get married, you start looking around the places where you want to begin your life together. So where does that journey go and how does it ultimately settle in Fairlawn?
So we first got married and we moved to Washington Heights because that's what you do. And where we were living at the time, there was no air. At the time, Washington Heights had an air around like the Broyers area, but it couldn't cross Broadway because Broadway wasn't closed at the time, so there were too many, it was going from one end of an island to the other end, you couldn't air up there. And then there was the YU side, and we lived like somewhere in the middle because I always have to make things complicated. So we lived somewhere in the middle, and there was no air, and we were married, and I was gonna have a baby. And I thought, how am I gonna have a baby and have no air? And I'm like, how will I be stuck here all day and not be able to go anywhere or do anything or see anyone? And I clearly am extroverted and want to be out, and I just couldn't imagine. So we're like, okay, let's start thinking about moving somewhere. So we had some friends who joined, was it called the TEC or the J, what was it called? The program when they paid the people to move here. Oh gosh. TEC something. Let's call it TEC. And if I'm wrong, then Tour enrichment something. So basically the Fairlawn, this part of Fairlawn was at the time not super popular. They thought, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna pay a few people to come to live here, and we're going to have them bring friends for Shabbos, and then they're gonna see how great this place is, and then they're gonna move here. It clearly worked. Clearly it worked, but so it was the first year of that, and I think first we applied for it, but we were too late and we didn't get whatever, that was irrelevant, but I feel like we've probably got more people to move here than any of those people they paid, but it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. But we came and we were visiting friends, and we were here, didn't come for Shabbos, we just came to visit friends one evening, and we're like, look at these parking spots. And we were also debating, like, well, should we move, should we not move? And at the time, Daniel was about to apply to medical school, and he was taking a year off, and he was gonna work for a year, and he actually got a job that required him to stay for 2 years. And we're like, well, if we're going for 2 years, Taka, you can move somewhere. Like, 1 year, okay, no. So we said, all right, we're moving. We saw parking spaces, and the apartments were the same prices as the Heights, and we had washer and dryers. We're really not so, we don't think so much about our decisions. We got very lucky, and we're like, great, we're gonna move. And he calls his parents who were on a trip in Poland, and and it was, again, this is like 16 years ago, so I hate to be like, oh, and phones weren't the same, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't so easy 16 years ago to call your parents who were sitting on a bus going to Poland, and he left the message, okay, well, I'm putting off medical school for 2 years. We're not moving back to LA, because that was also part of what they thought was gonna happen. And we're moving to Fairlawn, New Jersey, and have a great trip. And they were like, what are you talking about? Have you thought of this? Anyway, again, we tripped into another really happy accident, and we moved here. We moved here on the first day of Chol Moed Sukkos. Also, what idiot moves on Chol Moed Sukkos? Only 22-year-olds. And I was 9 months pregnant, and they had a simple Shuvah in the shul, and I said, we have to go and make friends. He's like, we just moved today. I'm like, I don't care. And we came to shul, and I guess Chevy found us because and she goes, do you have, oh, there was no sukkah in the comments. I'm like, really, no, but she's like, what are you eating tonight? And we're like, kind of like, we don't know, we're idiots. We don't know what we're doing. And she's like, here, come over, I have some leftovers. And we're like, oh, that's so nice. And then of course, 5-course meal later, leftovers. And I think that's a really, like, now I tell that story and it sounds so like, oh, of course, but no, but like when you're experiencing that for the first time, you're just like, where am I? Like, this is incredible. And we were like, I guess we made the right choice. And that was 16 years ago.
All right, so 16 years. So this is your chance to give a little advertising for Fairlawn. What do you tell people?
Because this is the group I need to advertise.
This is being recorded. So when you hear from someone now who's like, oh, I'm thinking of moving to Teaneck or Passaic or Fairlawn, what's your pitch of like why it's been such a meaningful place for you?
So I do think Fairlawn is a self-selecting community. And I don't know that it even at this point needs to be sold so much, because I think that what Fairlawn is, and this is what I say to people, world. Like Fairlawn is something very special and unique in the tri-state area. And when you come to Fairlawn, you either get it and you have to live here and this is the only place for you, or you're just like, these people are weird and the pizza shops are like weird with their food and I don't understand why there's no bagel place and why can't you eat the bagel place when they're cut when you're they don't get it. And if you don't get it, it's like, wait, Bergenfield is beautiful. And you can live, and it's a different, it's not saying that one's better than the other, it is just a very self-selecting place. I remember I was at a Shabbos meal with people who were visiting, and they weren't like people who I probably would have had a long-term relationship with. And the people who we were eating with were so nervous. Oh my gosh, they're gonna move here, and then all these people never gonna move here, that's not gonna be great. I'm like, no. They're not gonna like it here. We don't like, she made a stroller because it wasn't fancy enough. And I'm just like, listen, I don't think this is the place that you're gonna feel comfortable. Like it's just a very different, it's self-selecting. And I think, and that's why I say, like, come and visit. And if you get it and you feel it, then there's no other place for you to be. And it's okay if it's not for you also, because there's really no houses left.
So I want to ask you some career questions, but before we go into that, I have one more Jewish question for you. So I get asked this question a lot. I'm wondering if you do, because we come from like similar backgrounds. People often ask me like, what's the best thing about living an observant life, and what's the biggest challenge? Because we know both worlds. So how would you answer that?
I would say the biggest challenge is very practical when it comes in certain situations, like when it comes to just like wanting to going out and experiencing different things in the world and having to plan and just figure things out. Well, where am I going to eat? How am I going to make this work? Am I going to be able to do this for Shabbos? There's certain things you can't do because of Shabbos, and it's okay. Like nothing's worth doing if you can't do it because of Shabbos, but it's something you have to deal with. And if you are a person who at least for me, this is a challenging thing for me. There's something I want to do, but I can't do it on Shabbos. Okay, like I have to accept that is something I can't do, and it's okay, but it's still a very challenging aspect. Or if there are things that there's so many things you can make work. It's very rare that you can't make something work, but it just takes so much more effort. You know, I was actually thinking, like, God willing, I'm going on the mission trip to Israel in a few weeks, and I just went on a trip and I packed an entire suitcase of food, right? Like literally, no, like I checked a suitcase of 50 pounds of food. Why? Because I was terrified. Who knew what was gonna happen? Ended up we brought back about 35 of those pounds of food, but I was so freaked out. And then I'm thinking about what I'm gonna pack for this next trip because everybody in Israel's asked me to bring stuff, so I'm not gonna bring much of my own stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't need to worry about, I'll bring a couple snacks with the plane. Like, what's the big deal? I'll figure it out when I get there, which is a relief feeling that you don't have. So I guess my biggest challenge is the things that you want to do that are not really set up for your lifestyle. You just have to work that much harder to make it work for you. So that would be it.
And the other side of what you like the most about this life?
What I like the most about it? Well, I love that I have this incredible extended family, not just Fairlawn's special, like it's really different and special here, but just in general. Okay, another example, Kai and I were on a cruise winter break, and there were a lot of Jews on this cruise because it's winter break, and you know, Jews find the deals. There was very good deals, so there were a lot of Jews on it. And I'm standing in line behind a woman who said, I later found out was from California, not a Jewish woman. And a friend couple came in who I looked at them and knew that they were from, and they looked at me and knew I was from, and then we just started talking. Oh, where are you from? Where are you from? We knew each other. And this woman in front of me, like, asked me afterwards, she's like, I don't know exactly how she said it, but basically was like, do you know each other? Like, how did that conversation? I'm like, no, I have no idea who these, I don't even know what their name is. But I realized, and I kind of said to her, I was like, oh, but we're Jewish, and so we recognize, and I was like, this is gonna sound terrible. Like, I don't know, we have a handshake, what can I tell you? But we have this connection. I think having that fit, and I think now more than ever, I feel it very strongly, but I think, and I see my family who's not observant, and they don't have that connection. They don't feel that. They are not recognizable. They don't see people. They don't have that community that they feel. And so even if it's not to the broader community, if it's to like the closer one, I have a lot of my secondary family spend so much time talking about how do we build community and how do we get connections and how do we do this, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, is this really a problem? Like, I have community shoved down my throat constantly. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you putting so much effort into this? And I realized that doesn't exist, and I think that's the thing that I value the most, and I think is most important. I see how my children thrive and are doing better and stronger because of that. So.
All right, so let's talk career now. So I think people know you with Project Ezra now, but they probably don't know some of the steps that got you from coming out of college to there. So maybe hit on some of the highlights.
So when I started college, I was going to be an English and communications major. And if you know me or how I write, you would laugh. That was what I was going to do. And why was I going to do that? Because I thought, okay, good for whatever. I want to be a lawyer or a career. I don't really know. And I remember I was with my father once, and we were talking about what I was going to do. And he said, I said, what if I could do anything? I'd be a history major. I know, I'm getting there, don't worry. And he goes, then be a history major. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know about my career. He's like, it doesn't matter. Just do what you love, and you're gonna learn, and you're gonna get to the right place. So I like, okay. So I was a history major, and I loved every minute of it. And I think that it taught me how to think broadly and globally and critically in a way that I don't know that the communication major would have helped me. And then again, one day I was talking to my father, and I was like, I'm going to law school. And then I started taking the LSAT prep. I remember, again, I was with my dad, we were in Santa Fe, and I'm studying, and I have dyslexia, and I have a lot of learning disabilities, and I cannot take standardized tests. I can't do it. They're the bane of my existence. The fact that I got into Stern again, it was like someone just didn't look at the SAT. The fact that they don't require it now is like, but I was studying for the LSAT, I remember, and I was crying because I was having such a hard time. Like, why can't I figure this out? And then my father was taking a practice test. My father has a PhD in theoretical physics, so he was like a very smart person, and he was having a hard time with it. And then I cried even more. My dad can't figure this out. How am I ever going to figure this out? And then he was like, enough. Don't become a lawyer. And I was like, don't become a lawyer. Like, that was an option. He's like, you're gonna go into like some do-gooder activity, like work, and you're gonna love it and you're gonna be fine. I'm like, okay, don't become a lawyer, be a do-gooder. And I was like, now what the heck is that? And so I started looking at like, what degree is the do-gooder degree? And I remember I spoke with a few of my professors, and one was like, oh, well, then you should just become you should become a kindergarten teacher. I'm like, I don't like kids. So that's not going to be great. And I don't know if that was it. And then the other one was that gave me an idea that she's like, well, you could get a master's in public administration. I'm like, huh? So first I wanted to, let me take a step back. First I wanted to move to Washington, D.C. and get a master's in public policy. And my mother went, oh my God, she's never going to get married if she does that. And then I did, and I was not going to move to Washington, D.C. to get a master's in public policy. So what my professor said, get a master's in public administration. I'm like, what is that? Like, it's a master's degree in running things. It's fine. I'm like, okay, great. So immediately after college, I started working for a city council person in New York, while I went to, and I was getting my bachelor's degree. So, and then we moved here, and you can't work for the city of New York if you don't live in the city of New York. It's a whole thing. Anyway, moved here, started getting my master's degree at Fairleigh Dickinson, FDU, right here. And I started getting my master's in public administration. And it's just a master's degree in like, how to like keep spreadsheets. I'm telling you, it's like, if you go to NYU, it might be a little bit more real, but it's just to have letters at the end of your name, because the real experience is when you're working. So I started working in Brooklyn, living here, and everybody said, oh, you're gonna move to Brooklyn? I'm like, why would you ever leave here to move to Brooklyn? Like, I was like, why would you ever ask me that? And I was the site director at Shorefront Jewish Community Council. One thing, I was in a meeting a few months later. It was part of an organization called the Met Council, which is in New York, and I overheard one of the executives talking like, we hire young people because they're cheaper. And I went, okay, I figured out I got that job. but they also gave me the opportunity, and I stayed there, and things changed, and I became the executive director there, and that I got the experience of running an organization and dealing with deliverables and dealing with clients and dealing with the fundraising and so on. And then Rabbi Markowitz calls me one day and he goes, Robert Honig's retiring. And I went, really? He goes, yeah. I'm like, so they're never gonna hire me. why would they, like, I don't know what you're thinking. He's like, I think you should apply for it. And then, I got another email from Ariashna, Robert Koenig's retiring. I'm like, how does everyone know this? And it was because he was making it public. They were talking about it. It wasn't like secret. I was like, okay. And then they put out the job description and I sent in my resume. And then COVID happened and I never heard from anybody. Okay, because that was what happened. And then COVID kept happening and they're like, oh, Robert's still retiring. We gotta deal with this. And they started doing research and there were a lot of really good candidates. And I think it was another one of my moments that Hashem just like made them like ignore everything else that was in front of them. And after 6 months of interviewing, they offered me the job. And Robert really helped me transition. And it's different. It's very different work than I did before. But one thing I discussed with them and one thing I've found since then is taking the skills you have and really being able to utilize them within your community that you love and that you live in. That is really different. And this organization is very different compared to other organizations, Jewish organizations, or any organization. And the depth of what we're able to do. So that is the technical way that I got here. So I think why I always joke with Mark is that he should also need to get his real estate license because of all the people whose houses he's found for them that he would make so much he probably wouldn't have to marry a rabbi anymore. And I also think he should be he gets so many people jobs that he should be getting finder's fees.
Did you ever think about the idea that because you weren't raised religious and Judaism becomes a bigger part of your life, there's a lot of different not-for-profits you could have worked for, but the fact that Judaism is part of what they're doing, like how important is it to you that it's connected to something Jewish?
So I think it's very important for me because when I worked since my kids were little, like born. I mean, my kids have been in daycare since they were born. And if I'm going to drop my kids off at daycare and go to work, I have to make sure that I am doing something that I really feel is furthering the world in a certain way. And I think that there's thousands and thousands of nonprofits that do amazing things every day. But I think for me personally, I need to be able to have a more tangible relationship to that. And I think that's within my Judaism and my community that I feel that.
So let's also give you a chance to plug Project Ezrah a little bit. So first, like what's something that's really important you think our community should know about what the organization does?
I think in general, the organization has not done itself any favors over the last 20 years in its marketing. Why? Because we are so concerned with privacy that we don't even let ourselves talk about the things we should talk about. So that's one thing I'm really trying hard to do. I think that we should know also that since 2021, 1 in 8 families in Bergen County have been in some way connected to Project Ezrah. I can't go anywhere in Bergen County without seeing someone who in some way is connected to the organization through a needs situation, and also through the donor side, but really through the client side. Anywhere. I can't walk into a restaurant, I can't walk into a shul, I can't walk into a simcha without something. Which is a little complicated, but I work very hard to try to separate that and make sure people also don't think that when I walk in that they have to, like, I don't know, hide. It's a whole thing. But I think that's really important to know. I think it's important to know that while we're spending 40% more money on assisting families than we did 2 years ago. So we've gone from giving out $1 million in assistance to $1.4 million in assistance. And I think it's important to know that in 2022, we had, well, let me take a step back to explain this in context. When someone works with our organization, the first thing we do is we access any sort of benefits that they can get. And we try to help people in every possible way before our money starts to come into play, because we take tzedakah money very seriously, and there are so many resources available that might close the gaps, and that's great. and then we kind of, are moving on. So an assistance for financial application for financial assistance from us comes at the end of the process. So in 2022, we had 10 families who filled out that application. And in 2023, we had 25 families who filled that application out. And in January of 2024, we had 6, which means we've had 60% of our total from 2022. And it is for a few reasons. We think it's that we're more accessible than we used to be to people, but we are also just dealing in a situation that's very different than it was before. So I think it's important to know that the need in our community as a whole is great. Also, another fact, a fair lawn fact that I'll share, of the amount of the funds that we assist people with housing, 20% of the housing assistance we do is in Fair Lawn. Now, 20% of the people who live in Krich County don't live in Fair Lawn. It's not proportional. Now, on the other hand, it's cheaper to live in Fair Lawn. So we often tell people, if you're looking to move, you should move to Fair Lawn. You're gonna have a much more supportive community in general to live in if you're having any issues. And so recently, I mean, now it's still more affordable, but like everything's more affordable. So that's a interesting local fact also.
I was just thinking that there's so many causes where you can talk openly about them and no one feels uncomfortable at all sharing like everything about what the organization is doing, the number of people they've helped. So I'm just wondering like a little bit more, what is that feeling like of wanting to get your message out, but also knowing that people don't want to talk about these situations that they're in?
It is, we're walking a fine line, because we also don't want anyone to hear us talking and go like, oh, I don't want to be one of their statistics and talking, I can't get there out. So it is a fine line, but on the other hand, oh, yes, Penny has a question. Correct. So we have a ton of phone. So our job placement services, thank you. Mia's gonna help me with my with our market. We do job placement assistance. Oh, yes. Yes. So one thing we do, and one thing we started when I got there was that I wanted to create services for people who were not client, that were just everyday, and Medicare assistance. Everyone at one day has to get Medicare, and maybe getting Medicare advice from someone who isn't going to make any money off of the advice they give you is very helpful. And so, yes, I couldn't say it, but you could. Remember I said I can't walk into a room without at least one person having something to do with us. And we provide a lot of services that have nothing to do with financial assistance. We do our job development, we have our Medicare assistance, we have resume workshops that we're doing once a month now. So we're really trying to put that soft edge onto the organization as well.
Let's give you one more Project Ezra question, which is, obviously people can get involved by donating money. What's another way that someone can get involved in the organization outside of making a donation?
So obviously donations are great, and everybody loves them. But outside of that, we really feel that having a strong network of community members who can provide a service, a professional service, a pro bono service to families, it's a huge help. So I'm gonna say, Penny just came up to me and said, I can help tutor, and I mean, we have a whole system in place now where someone will call you and give you a little bit of an orientation in how our pro bono system works and so on, and if you're available to help, great. If you're not available, no problem, and we can write you a letter and you can give it to your accountant, and it is really great, but it really helps build that community, and also helps people who want to give back, but they don't know the best avenue to do so. And we kind of filter it through. So if you hear from us, like this person needs a tutor and they can't afford it, then you believe us, because we know everything else going on, and you don't have to ask any more questions. So a lot of time, whatever your professional, whatever you can do well, we probably will have someone at some point who needs that help.
Okay, so before we close the interview, I prepared a few lightning round questions.
Oh, I'm excited.
But I just want to give you a chance, if there's any like final thoughts you want to share, your Jewish journey, career journey, family journey to Fair Lawn, do you want to cover?
If you want more details on the Jewish journey, you can listen to episode 6 of Saturday Shabbos. If you want to hear more of it. No, I just think I don't feel that I'm so interesting to talk about, to be honest. And I think that I'm really thankful for the opportunity to chat, and I hope that it you know, is again, hopefully there's some inspiration, because apparently there is no, there are no refunds. But I think that we covered it all.
So you may have thought you're not that interesting, but I think those of us who are in the room found a lot of what you had to say very good. Three lightning round questions, and then do you usually give people a chance to ask questions, or you a little less?
Good.
Okay, all right, so, all right, first question for you. Are you nervous? You ready?
I'm good, I got
Okay.
this. I'm on a roll.
All right. Who would you say at Shomrei Torah is the most talented at winging?
Ari Krich. Because he's the only Krich who I get here on time and hears me before.
All right, you kept it in the family.
I
Good
did,
job.
I did.
Okay. Question.
Ari might actually left, otherwise.
All right, question 2. Among the years 2024, 2034, and 2064, which of those 3 is Daniel Krich most likely to be Shomrei Torah president?
The one that I'm most likely to actually be the one doing it.
All right, last question. You and Carol had the pleasure, my wife Carol, thank you, had the privilege of running the Shomrei Torah sisterhood together.
Yes.
So what would you say is most gratifying about getting involved with the shul?
I think it's the relationships you make. I really, really do. And I think that when the first time I started really making friends in Fairlawn, it wasn't so long after I got here, but someone somehow got me to come one Moshe Shabbos to set up for a yoga meeting. Like and I'm like, how did they get me here? I don't know how. And then I guess, and from there you start doing it, and that's how you make friends and relationships, and that's how you become close to people. So I would really say it's like, well, it's fun to host the events and to do this and to have that. It's the friendships and the relationships, and those later help you in life. Those the relationships I made in high school, the relationships I made in college, relationships I have here. I tap into those when I need something.
And do you want to go to the open Q&A? Yeah. You want to take it? Do you have any questions? Let's bring the microphone.
Rachel, you should cover all your wonderful accomplishments. I wanted to ask you, myself as a Jew, but I never attended any type of a Jewish school, but I love the intellectualism of Judaism. And I wanted to ask you, when you went to Torah, were you also attracted to the intellectualism, or did you go to also like the intellectualism of Judaism?
I wish I could say, oh yes. I'm so interested in the intellectual aspect of it. I'm a social creature, and to me, while things were interesting, or I was able to learn things, and I found things interesting intellectually, I don't think that wasn't my job. It was the communal aspect of it. It was the familiar aspect of it. If it was the things that I was learning intellectually, it was because I would look at it from this chain that we had. Like I remember when I was in college, we went to Germany. Don't ask. There was this trip. It was German propaganda for Jews. I'm telling you, they kept doing it, and they brought a bunch of Jewish students to Germany to be like, look, we're not Nazis anymore. I promise. And we were like, well, if it's a free ticket Germany, we're still going to go, even if we believe you or not. Anyway, so I'm in Germany, and they had this beautiful Jewish museum that they just started. And I remember looking at a Haggadah, and it was the opening pages of the Haggadah, which were the exact same opening pages of the Haggadah that I had just used. And while that might teach to sound like an intellectual thing, I saw that this Haggadah is hundreds and hundreds of years old. It's exactly what I'm looking at now. And that connection is really, I think, really what got me hooked onto it more.
Very beautiful.
Yes. Anybody else have a question? So much. You did a great job tonight. You will have my email. I think the best help sometimes is hearing from you, right? Matter of fact, someone came over to me in shul on Shabbos and said, I have a suggestion for someone we should interview. And it was really a really great suggestion. So if you have somebody that you think should be interviewed, send me an email. We'll follow it up and we'll see if we can make it happen. Actually, I'm working on the suggestion from Shabbos already. I put it into action already, trying to get this person to come. Like I said, it's been less than 2 years, and this is our 6th interview. So we're in the interview business. So thank you again. Thanks for coming tonight. I hope you enjoy. Guys, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me just shut this down.
Long time. I remember when I was sitting in shul.